Next, we have Mr. Dublois.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning. Thank you, Senator Scott, for being here, for having us here, and for all you do for Floridians, especially on this very important issue. And I appreciate the opportunity to testify here today on behalf of the Foundation for Government Accountability on this very, very important issue. Seniors are grappling with the same crisis millions of Americans are facing: sky-high inflation brought on by this administration's policies. The average American over the age of 65 is spending more than 13% more for the very same goods and services compared to what they were spending in January of 2021. For certain expenses, like transportation, it's roughly 28% more, or an extra $280 per month. As Senator Scott alluded to, that's a hidden tax on seniors across this country. And despite the Biden administration's bragging, the automatic cost of living adjustments for Social Security are by no means a fix to this inflation. The Senior Citizens League has forecasted that these proposed COLA increases in 2023 may not offset ongoing inflationary costs for seniors, resulting in a further erosion of their purchasing power. I want to touch on three key causes of this inflation: America's labor shortage, runaway government spending, and our energy crisis. First, America's labor shortage is driving up the cost of everyday goods and services for seniors. The labor force participation rate was already declining for roughly 2 decades prior to the pandemic, but has persistently failed to recover to even pre-pandemic levels. Today, there are still more than 3 million missing workers from the American economy, with nearly twice as many open jobs as there are people looking for them. This begs the question: where are these missing workers? Well, the answer is millions of them are on welfare. Pandemic-era welfare benefits have simply made it more lucrative to stay home than return to work for many Americans. Consider the following. First, the work requirement for able-bodied adults without dependents aged 18 to 49 on food stamps is suspended nationwide, all while food stamp benefit amounts have been repeatedly hiked over the last 2.5 years. Second, both states and the Biden administration have taken dramatic steps to expand welfare for able-bodied adults via Medicaid. And finally, the Biden administration is seeking to further erode eligibility checks and program integrity in welfare programs that are already riddled with improper payments and fraud. So long as the public health emergency continues and these elevated welfare benefits persist, so will America's labor shortage. This has the further undesired effect of crowding out resources for seniors. For example, consider that most of the growth in Medicaid since the beginning of the pandemic has been amongst able-bodied adults, while Medicaid waiting lists for truly needy Americans, such as those who are elderly, has remained in the hundreds of thousands nationwide. In addition to the labor shortage, runaway government spending, like the more than $5 trillion in pandemic-related stimulus, has undoubtedly fueled the inflation crisis. Consider that if we just rolled back federal spending to just pre-pandemic levels, we could eliminate the federal budget deficit. And so-called remedies to inflation.
Can you just say that again? Do you guys realize the numbers? We've had an unbelievable increase in revenues, but expenses have just skyrocketed.
Yeah. So if we just rolled it back, spending to pre-pandemic levels, the federal budget deficit would be effectively eliminated, if you can imagine that.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Just in 3 years.
Yeah, it's truly unbelievable and a sign of how much we're spending. And so-called remedies to this, like the poorly named Inflation Reduction Act, have only made the crisis worse, as my colleagues have already alluded to. According to the Wharton School of Business, the Inflation Reduction Act will actually increase the rate of inflation, as hundreds of billions of dollars are dedicated to green energy subsidies and expansions of Obamacare. Finally, the current administration's undermining of American energy has caused utility and gas prices for seniors to skyrocket. Rather than energy independence, the policy of the current administration has been an energy capitulation to the left. We've seen bans and restrictions on domestic drilling, new ESG guidance that threatens access to capital for energy companies, the canceling of the Keystone XL pipeline, and much more. As monthly drilling permits have plummeted, gas and utility prices have, unsurprisingly, gone through the roof. Now, there are 3 key steps federal policymakers can take to reverse the severe effects inflation is having on the financial security of seniors. First, end the federal public health emergency, or untie it from major expansions of welfare programs so that these pandemic-era welfare expansions will finally recede. And while we're at it, we should implement universal work requirements for able-bodied working age adults in these programs, like in S4448, Senator Scott's Let's Get to Work Act, so that we can encourage Americans to re-enter the workforce and break free from the clutches of government dependency. Second, reaffirm support for the American energy sector by reversing the Biden administration's undermining of fossil fuels. And last but not least, hold the executive branch accountable for federal spending generated by rulemaking and guidance. Congress can again take a page out of Florida's book, where, thanks to a law implemented by then Governor Scott, Florida legislators have to approve costly regulations proposed by the executive branch. We can and should replicate Florida's success on the national stage by passing the REINS Act to rein in executive rulemaking. Together, these three steps will preserve the financial security of seniors by ending the erosion of their savings and purchasing power that has so severely affected them as a result of this administration's failed policies. Again, thank you for the opportunity to testify today.